7:30 p.m. will now come to order. And first things first, on the second day of spring, official second day of spring, we have a weather report and a seasonal report.
Exactly. Tomorrow is going to be probably the pick day of the week and the weekend. It would have been Tuesday because it was up 70 degrees. Well, yesterday wasn't bad, but it's just been so windy. Tomorrow will be the less windy day of the week. Then it gets windy again on Saturday with rain, possibly heavy at times. We have a flood watch in effect from late tomorrow night through the afternoon on Saturday, and then Sunday the sun comes back out, but it's going to be windy again. And stay a little bit cool until I think the last couple of days of the month. I think we might even get up into the 80s.
Woo.
So stay tuned for that. But the far as spring is concerned, above normal temperatures, and right now it looks like near to above normal precipitation. So actually a nice spring all in all, because that's always good for the agriculture, for the plants and everything else.
Good.
So good news on the
Thank you.
weather front.
Okay.
Thanks.
Good. Well, that's a nice beginning. Now we will turn to residents. If you have any comments, discussions, anything right now, or you can wait till after various portions that we're having a budget discussion later and various committee reports. So residents? Anyone? Marty?
Hi there, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. I can't get my video to work, but at least my sound is working this time. Resident had a question on my block about whether there was going to be a spring street cleanup. And I know, Michael, you proposed that for the future, that there's a lot of pollen and will continue to be, spring
Right.
debris on the streets. And so just there was a info question of whether there's going to be a spring street sweeping.
Well, it's written into next year's budget. Are we doing it this year?
I want to do it this year, but Arthur is right that would send us over the budget for street sweeping. We logged a lot of hours picking up leaves in the fall, so that'll be a council decision, and that's part of my manager's report tonight. So
It'll
ahead
be
of
up for
Marty.
discussion.
Well, I would recommend, given the residents' request, that if we can do it this spring, we should do that. I like the idea of doing it in the future. Let's start now.
Yeah.
Okay,
Agreed.
good. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Okay, there are plenty of time to chime in later. People show up or have questions. Okay, we had the meetings were distributed to the council of the last meeting, and here we have the opportunity to approve them. So a motion to approve the meetings of the last meeting.
The minutes, I'll move to approve.
Okay, we have a second. Aye. All vote. Okay.
Arthur, may I
Yeah.
just make a
Yeah, go ahead.
second last
Sure.
comment? I just want to share with the rest of the council. I just wanted to thank you for the added time on the last agenda to talk a little bit about the ordinance process. And I know that there's some information in the packet that was shared very briefly. And obviously today we're focusing on the budget. And so what I thought that we could do is in the next council meeting, we could get back. I think it'll be innocuous. We'll have time to work, I believe, with Arthur, Michael, Ron, based upon some reference materials that they had already prepared in previous years. And I see this as really a nothing burger. It's kind of just putting a framework in place that we pretty much already use, but at times, sometimes we may have a few steps here and there that in the, let's say, the spirit of the moment, we may there may be some consistency that we could improve if we have those things.
So you want to next month discuss the ordinance introduction process?
Exactly.
Okay, we'll put it on the agenda. Just remind us.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good, thank you. Committee reports. I want to mention that the water committee, Phil Hurst is traveling and will be able to chime in at around 8:30. So we will hold off for the water committee until then, but other committees do we have committee members? We have the party committee is here.
Yeah, the fun committee, the fun.
The punk.
We had a really successful a fair event, as everyone will attest to at the Affirm Restaurant. Everybody was happy with that. There was a turnout of a little over 200 people, not all at the same time, but I've gotten a lot of positive feedback on that. We want to get ready for our sidewalk celebration in May, so I'd like to get Philip Hurst and my other guys, Paul McGowan and Yasmina on the committee to select a date. Any date is good for me to talk about that.
We also have a 40th anniversary of the village coming up next year.
We have the Arbor Day. All right.
No, 40th anniversary of the village.
1985.
March 19th.
Okay.
And we start thinking about doing something for that
Next year.
next
But
year,
that'll be, yeah, the next
next year.
council, the
Okay.
next
Well, I
term.
was thinking about the Arbor Day because
Yeah. Okay,
we're gonna celebrate that too.
Mm.
So that's my report.
But we do have a notation in the budget, which is this council. So
Yeah.
I'm just putting that out.
okay. Anyone else? Ethics, election, Marty, election committee report?
Yes, thank you. It's in the packet, and Michael, thank you for putting our written reports in the packet every month. The process is on track. We've been posting the notices and the articles in the newsletter and the updates and the weekly wrap-ups. And again, thanks for the staff support on that. The due date for candidates to file is this Saturday, March 23rd, 6 p.m. And once we have the final list of candidates, we expect to have the official VMA election information packet ready for printing by Monday or Tuesday, March 25 or 26. So that'll be on schedule. That needs to be mailed out to the voters by April 6th. And Michael has decided to do the printing and mailing in-house. The committee members will be available, as we can be, to help with that process if needed. But we much appreciate the staff support on the printing and mailing. Meanwhile, we're continuing to work with the voter roll contractor who's doing a superb job. He's verified about 550 of the voters who were on the voter roll last year. And there's about 200 more to go that are not readily confirmable from other data sources who aren't, for example, on the village office list of residents or aren't on the county voter roll or don't appear in any other public records. So we're getting down to narrowing it down, how many more need to be confirmed. The final list will be called and contacted by the committee members because we want to make sure that every eligible voter is able to vote. We really are very much interested here in making sure that people can vote. The contractor also identified, as our report shows, an initial list of 77 people who do not appear to be current residents. And of course, the VMA regs and the state election regs both prohibit us from giving ballots to people who are not current municipal residents. So there's, kind of a fine line we're walking here. On the one hand, we're being careful to include everybody who's eligible, but it looks like we have a sizable number of people on last year's voter roll who are not in fact qualified voters. And the procedures that the council approved this year and last year as well, and the year before, require notification in writing to anybody who may be removed from the list of qualified voters. We looked for the notification letter from last year. Apparently there was not one. So this committee this year did a notification letter, very friendly notification letter, and sent it out to the 77 people, again, with Michael's help. He did the mail merge and printing. Thank you, Michael. Working off of the contractor's list of people who don't seem to be current residents. The fact that there were 77 of them is a little troubling because that's more than 10% of last year's voter roll. But on the other hand, the process this year is working beautifully. We are, looking for people who are valid voters, and we're including them. That letter's gone out, and so far of the 77 people on that list of probably not qualified voters, only one has come back to say, yep, I am here. And that's great. That tells us that the contractor is, in fact, that his systems of checking people are, in fact, accurate. That, anyway, and then we're inviting people, of course, to immediately get in touch with us if they are still here. And we'll be following up to finish that up by March 31st, because April 1st, we have a committee meeting scheduled to approve the voter roll that we will be sending to the contractor, the mailboat contractor, to produce the ballots. So this is on a very tight schedule, and I have to commend the contractor, Julian Lampier, for his very thorough work. He's really been checking all the data sources. I also again want to thank Michael, who's assisting with the move-in and move-out data from the village office. And the committee also voted to enlist the assistance of the street captains to help us verify those last few voters to find out whether they really are still residents here or whether there's somebody else living at their house, in which case we add those people as new voters. So it's been quite a process. One thing that's worked particularly well this year is the committee did something new with Michael's help. We put out an online voter verification survey, and we posted that multiple times with a link to it in the weekly wrap-ups and in the newsletter articles and standalone notes. And a lot of residents did respond to that voter verification survey, so that has really helped us to update the voter roll too. So all in all, it's been a very productive year in terms of actually seeing what the process is like to check your voter roll. And we want to make sure everybody who's eligible to vote can vote. So we're not doing a purge here. We're simply doing a cleanup of people who are in fact living here. Anybody who's
Marty,
here.
Can
Yeah.
I ask a question? I think you
Sure,
answered
you
it,
bet.
but it's Andrew. The 77, the 77 folks that you mailed these letters to, they were all, these folks were all still supposedly living in the village, but they're not. Is that
Yes.
basically the issue?
That's
So,
correct. They were on the voter roll last year as being current residents,
yeah,
but the contractor couldn't confirm them this year and found information on a lot of them that's indicated that they were not in fact residents. And so we sent the 77 letters out saying, if you still live here, please get in touch. And only one of the 77 says he's still here. So
and is
that's where
there
we
is
are.
there a way to double check? Like some folks might just not respond or don't look at their mail or throw their mail out.
Yes.
Is there a way to double check these numbers?
Yes, the procedures approved in the last couple of years, and certainly for this year, say that we also send out a second written notification. If somebody doesn't respond within 30 days, then we send out a second notification saying you may be removed from the qualified voter list, and please get in touch. So there's 2 rounds of written notification here.
It started off because they can't find them in the village.
Right.
So that,
Right.
that initiates.
And one point of
Yeah.
clarity, I'm not sure that they were all on last year's voter list, Marty. I think also most of those people came from the county's list of voters. And Julian's doing a very thorough job of making sure that they're not, that list is, that we're removing those people correctly.
So the 77, those names came from the county, not from the village?
Yeah, we get the
Most of them-
county's list,
Most
so-
of them came from both. Most of them were on both. And the county list is notoriously inaccurate, as I think everybody here knows. So, but Julian is being extremely thorough, which is exactly what we need here. So we'll see. At the end of the day, I expect to have a very clean voter roll here. And I really appreciate the council's support for doing this audit this year. It clearly has been needed. Some of the people that Julian found on the list literally haven't lived here for years. One of my neighbors moved away like 10 years ago and was still in the voter roll. So this has really been quite a good project. The other nice byproduct here is that it will give Michael a much more up-to-date and complete list of village residents for the office list for the directory, because we're going to be doing a new directory. I understand Michael's got that on the works for this summer and fall. So we'll have the directory, as you probably all know, is very much out of date now too. And this whole process of verifying the voter roll has been useful in so many ways, and not just in terms of election accuracy and compliance with state regulations and VMA regulations, but also in terms of giving us a better census of the village. And that's something that the village management, Michael particularly, it'll be really helpful.
One
Okay.
final question, and maybe this is offline, just for best practices. I'd be curious to know, we don't have to discuss this right now, what this auditor did that we haven't done, and maybe we can do that so we can save some money in future, future
What-
years. Because if he's just comparing the county list to our list and their discrepancies, I think that's what we've done in the past as well. So I'm just curious.
Yeah, great
If
question.
there are
This is
lessons learned here.
Yes, this is much more comprehensive. We're comparing started with the 2023 voter roll. That was the baseline. compared it to the current village office list of residents, which has like 457 people on it, I think, when we started. And we had 747 voters on the voter list. So obviously there was some incompleteness there. And then we looked at the county list. And then he also went to property records. And he went to the sources from the committee, where committee members who are legally authorized to verify voters verified the people that we knew personally. And that was a couple hundred people between the 5 of us on the committee that we know that we can verify. And also we were able to verify where somebody had died or moved away. And now we're in the process of enlisting the aid of the street captains to get to those last 200, 150 people that still are not confirmed, to find out if they still live there. The
Yeah.
street captains can provide us with information. They can't verify a voter, but they can give us information that the committee can then use to verify the voter. So we've also looked at obituaries and literally every possible source of information to confirm that someone is there. And Michael, like I said, has been very helpful with the move-in, move-out data. We even checked with real estate agents who cover Martin's Additions to get additional move-in, move-out data there. And also provide the real estate agents at our request, the committee's request, gave the contractor some rental information about properties that are rented. One of the things that the contractor ran into is where the property ownership records in the county were not consistent with the person listed at that address on any of the voter rolls. And we were able to determine that they were renters. So it's been quite a comprehensive check. And one of the products we've asked the contractor for at the end of the day here in April is in fact a SOP, a standard operating procedure, describing exactly what his verification process has been. So the committee can replicate it in the future, or perhaps hire a contractor to do a much easier version of this. This has been like the major version. But I think going forward, we probably might want to consider having a contractor do the same kind of thorough check every year or every other year going forward, because we shouldn't let it get as out of whack as it has gotten. So this is about accuracy for elections, and that's important, but it's
Any
also
other
about
council members have questions?
The only thing, and this is rhetorical, I just want to put out there, I think in the best year, which was the first year that yourself and Katie were elected to the council, I think that might have been the highest turnout in terms of the number based upon the list. I think it was close to 70 or over 60%. And I guess what I'm saying is
Year.
was the best year. That was the best.
We're not telling you.
I'm sorry.
That's the time.
I don't mean to
For
offend
sure.
anybody, including myself.
I'll take-
So I guess the real question, in the highest turnout year, we're still looking at gaps of 30, perhaps 40%. And so the rhetorical question is, of that 70 or 77, presumptively, none of them cast a ballot for the election. You know what I mean? I would imagine that they are part of the cohort that just didn't turn out because
Yeah.
they were not residents
Yeah.
and they just are no longer
Yeah.
here and engaged.
We
So
can try and aspire to a Russian level of
Yeah.
participation,
99%.
86 or 87. No, they were pretty conservative.
Uh,
we
Mark-
can, in fact, it is possible to check from Eclectic, the mail vote contractor, to get a list of the residents who voted, not how they voted, but simply the list of names who did return their envelopes. And that's something that we've discussed with the contractor this year as a further check that he might want to do before we finalize the voter roll. Now, of course, it is possible that somebody got a ballot for Joe Smith and voted it even though Joe Smith doesn't live here anymore. So the fact that Joe Smith shows up on an electeds list doesn't necessarily mean they're a resident. The criteria is very much the definition that the council adopted in September, which is that somebody needs to have VMA as their primary residence. And if they're, their sole voting residents, and they need to be over 18. And the contractor has been looking specifically at family members of people where we have 1 or 2 people listed on the village list as residents, but there may be 4 or 5 voters at that house with adult children. And so that's one area where the committee has been making phone calls to individual households to say, is your son Jimmy still here? And it does come down. I mean, one nice thing about having a village this size is that we really can get pretty close to you know, not 100% accuracy. I mean, that's probably unrealistic, but probably 95% accuracy, because we can contact people. And we do know, I mean, the committee, the 5 members of the committees, you know, were able to verify a large number of voters just because we knew them personally. And so, and again, the street captains are being helpful in that.
Marty, in your last publication, you noted the number of nominees that you've received. Can you update that?
Well, we've had 2 nominees. Only one person has actually filed. You know, to become a candidate, you have to file the statement and the COI form. And so far, you're the only one, Arthur. I don't know if you want to announce that you were a candidate, but we have one additional nom.
You didn't really give him an option.
It is public information.
Like I didn't have a choice.
Okay,
It is public information, and we have
Not
not
yet.
publicly.
Technically
not-
not yet.
Well, the committee meetings are public. But in
course,
fact, we
yeah,
have
I
not
know that.
announced publicly the other nominee because they have not filed their candidate paperwork yet. And so
Are we
that's
sure
where we
they-
are.
Get out there and file, nominate somebody.
We
Okay,
have
thank you, Marty.
repeatedly encouraged our residents to put their names on the ballot, and we've sent lots of cheerful, encouraging, you know, messages and notices out in the weekly wrap-ups, and really encouraging people to step forward because, you know, it's their community, our
Oh.
community. Let me complete the report here, if I could.
Sure.
These are all great questions. We've also been working with the mail vote contractor Eclectic to prepare the ballot packets to be qualified. The first round of sample ballot envelopes that they gave us were incorrect. Paul Weller and I corrected those. We'll check the entire Eclectic packet because we're required as a committee to approve it, including the ballot format.
And
once we
postal
have those.
tracking?
The postal tracking was really interesting. You know, it's been required for several years. And when we asked Eclectic, you know, what they were doing about that, they said they weren't doing it. And so we were a little taken aback. And I mentioned at the last council meeting that they said they no longer have the subcontractor who does that, and that it would cost. We asked Michael to get an estimate from him, and Eclectic said it would cost $4,000 in addition to do that. And I got to tell you, the committee thought that was excessive. So we did some research on letter tracking because it's obviously a social service that's available. And we found a company called LetterTrack that can do it for 18 to 20 cents an envelope, which would be for 750 voters, about $250, which is really minimal. And then at the committee's request, the Eclectic staff did a small test run of that LetterTrack postal tracking system, and they reported that the test worked well. So we actually have a request for council action this evening because that postal tracking, especially on the return envelopes, is pretty important. When you have elections where, you know, 1 or 2 votes can affect the outcome, it's really important to know that you don't have 10 or 20 or, heaven help us, 50 envelopes sitting in the Philadelphia post office or something. And we requested the council authorize the committee to have Eclectic use the LetterTrack system to provide postal tracking. We were really doing Eclectic's work for them by finding this LetterTrack system and asking to test it, and they did test it. So we just need, I think, authorization just to keep everything transparent. That it's
go do
okay
it.
for us. We need an okay to tell Eclectic to use this.
Any other questions? Come.
So you want to approve the $250?
Yes, we will approve.
By acclamation.
Yeah,
Thank
Okay.
you.
thank you. Any
And
other
the
committee?
last part of the report is just to say we appreciate the council's support for the election process this year. It's really
Okay.
been done very thoroughly, and we really appreciate your support. And we want to
you.
really thank Michael for his efficient assistance. That's it. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Do we have any other committee in attendance?
If there's any other committee members.
The only committee, that may chime in is the
Water later.
Yeah, I just sent Phil a text and Mark said he might fill in, so. but
Okay.
not- I don't. think-
Okay, so we will hold off on hearing from the water committee until we hear from them. So, budget. The fiscal year begins on July 1st, ends June 30th, but we have to approve a budget by mid-May, which means we introduce a budget tonight. It gets a lot of time for discussion and it gets final approval in the mid-May meeting. So that's roughly 2 months from now. Actually, the
It's-
May meeting is
Move
May
to
9th. So make sure that the charter requires that we have an annual meeting by mid-May, May 15th. And so the first Thursday that meets that is May 9th. So the budget will be adopted then. So tonight is the night we introduce it. It gets its first public airing, discussion by council, by our treasurer, by me, by anyone else. So Jeff, you want to start that?
I'd be delighted. And let me just say, I know it's in the packet. We have it. You have a few residents. David, I see you acknowledging you and Peter Ross, who were spectacular in our open working session. How do you feel? Should I just throw up the PDF just so that others who are on
Yeah.
Zoom can see it?
Everyone has the packet,
Okay.
It's in the packet. Okay.
Okay.
and your discussion is on page 11 for.
Sounds good. Well, if anyone who is out there in cyberspace needs us to project, just speak up and we can. But other than that, we're going to go through with what we have in front of us. Okay, perfect. So I'll just go through a couple of the highlights and then turn over to Michael, Arthur, and as I mentioned, David is here, who was really just truly spectacular in his comments and made it a really high quality discussion, as well as Peter Ross and then others who were not in the working session, but provided their feedback. So let me go through the highlights. We had a working session on Thursday, the 14th, where we had staff, residents, and myself and Arthur. And first we had a very thoughtful discussion. It was very engaged, as a budget discussion should be, line item by line item. I think it lasted over 2 hours, really comprehensive. And you can see here a laundry list of the things we discussed, not all inclusive, but really some of the key issues, you know, anywhere from addressing flooding and technical surveys, which we will talk a little bit about, capital projects for improving infrastructure, extending pilot programs for aging in place, composting, snow shoveling, hosting additional community events. In particular, I think Katie had mentioned and reminded us the 40th anniversary, which is very exciting and something we expect to perhaps do even standalone and special. Improving, Andrew, again, I always say you inspired me, you know, from traffic safety to also our security. So I think there's a couple novel things that we'll talk in a little bit. This includes the police presence and how we might think of creative ways or other ways of engaging with them to strengthen not only the presence, but giving some residents, and David, if you want to chime in, but just the idea that we do pay a significant amount and feeling that we get the bang for the buck sort of thing. And then the idea of some new information technology platforms. Again, we put in the IT budget, and I think Michael, you know, I'll let him chime in, but my guess is he's probably like jumping at the possibility that we really could kind of upgrade ourselves, not only in terms of hardware, but ways that we could have platforms that interact with the residents a little bit more strongly. And then again, the spectacular Michael, Aaron, and others, ways of having cost savings that weren't insignificant, that offset, you know, some of the administrative and even pilot programs. So really kudos to Michael, Aaron, and others. And then again, the idea of technical expert review of the building code and other things, and, you know, inclusive of Ron, but there may be some others. So with all that said, the following are some high-level key suggestions and points that are part of the budget that we'll then turn to in a line item by line item. We won't go necessarily through it all, but I'll also turn over to Michael and Arthur, and then residents, how they may want to pick out specific things. So revenue, we expect in 2025, you know, that we're going to have actually an increase of another $200,000 on interest alone from our reserves. Arthur had, you know, based upon calculations, it's really, so we are right now what we would call in a very strong cash position, and we will be, but then we'll talk a little bit about, again, some things that we have to be aware of. We have capital projects and also just rates of inflation, and we do have what we call these sweeteners, right? We had practically $1 billion in ARPA funds, and these interest rates as we all know from our own bank accounts, they do not, stay up there. In fact, this is very unusual. So we have to be a little bit careful because at some point this could shift. And we know that in prior years, we've had some lean times. The other big ticket item is the American Rescue Plan, the ARPA. And again, Michael and Arthur and Andrew and everyone else, starting last year, very much on top of this, right? And so again, for this year, the fiscal year 2025, we've indicated areas line by line where we could use the funds as part of operations, but we also see this as an opportunity to take on some new novel things that really mean an awful lot to our residents. And part of that is the Stormwater Committee, the task force, and the technical survey. So we believe Phil Hurst or Mark may join us, but if not, they've submitted a proposal. But really tonight, in case they can, this is about creating or having an envelope. And again, this is for discussion. We have time. Michael and Arthur, who is the liaison, we can refine that, but we'll go through it. And then other pieces that are listed here, managerial office salaries, street cleaning, things like this. So again, we feel that we are in a very good place, but we have to also recognize of the 500,000 that we still have, it needs to be programmed and actually, does it need to be dispersed, Michael,
No,
or we just
burdened.
contract?
The word they use is has to be burdened,
So it needs to be burdened or maybe
committed.
unburdened
Committed.
from us, but it needs to be burdened and committed by the end of the calendar year, December
Yeah.
2024.
Correct.
So just putting that out there. Then another couple, pieces, just we want to just state that upfront, we don't see a need. We're going to keep our tax rates the same. And we are also going to double check, triple check, quadruple check that when we do submit this year, that we have our decimals and everything else. Even when we were doing this back and forth, it was just, it's not a laughing matter, but it is quite, complicated. So we've got a lot of eyes who are looking at this, and we're pretty confident that'll work itself out properly. The other piece, just recognizing residents have brought up several times this idea of a tax rebate, because we do have we have significant reserves. I mean, let's face it, approaching $5 million. That includes, current assets, but also reserves that we've set aside for capital projects. Now, by any metrics or indicator, even conservative, if you want to hold over roughly about $1 million plus for our expenses and, hold a 2-year amount, then you can see the surplus. But recognizing that we have significant capital projects, and also, as I mentioned, we've had a lot of sweeteners. So again, the glass half full is that we have a very enviable position, but still that we are taking a very responsible, thoughtful, methodical approach. And when it comes to rebates, again, we know that there are challenges around the legality, even though there's one municipality that seems to have figured something out. But we feel that there are some innovative ways for us to incentivize our residents, and we'll talk about that may take sort of that de facto of not a rebate necessarily, but you can opt in. And if you opt in, then you will be getting essentially quote unquote cash to participate incentive. So these are all very good. We'll talk about this. Okay, moving on. I promise I'll just another few minutes, and then we'll just a few look at the detailed line items, and I want to turn over to Michael Arthur to add comments, and then open it up to the rest of the council and our residents. So on the following page, page 12 of this submission, increased expenses. And again, just going through line item by line item, as I mentioned, and the budget codes are there. There's about a $4,000 increase anticipated phone IT. We talked about computers. And again, like I said, perhaps a licensing platform. We use Constant Contact, but there may be some other things we could look into. We also, a very popular program that I think we all agree as Tree City is perhaps a worthwhile and really just something that residents have really enjoyed is a increase of about $10,000 for our tree planting program. And I know that we've benefited, many others have. And then the next is about $10,000 increase, just reflecting vendor costs and inflation and other things around the street cleaning. And then we did put in about 6,500 increase in community events. That includes things like the brunch that we just had that was very successful, but also recognizing we have a 40th anniversary. And so that'll give us a little bit of wiggle room. And again, we all know that if we budget, and even if we approve, if we don't spend it, it goes back in. So we don't have to spend it, but we do want to at least have it in there so that if there are some standalone events that we can do it. And this also includes, you know, we've done this historically. We put in a few $1,000s in case for the 40th anniversary. Perhaps there's some sort of reception bag, or, you know, I don't even want to guess what it might be. This is not my area of expertise, but I presume that we will figure out some really wonderful things. If it were me, it would be a kitten for every household, but, you know, we'll figure that one out. And then, you know, cost savings. Again, Michael, Aaron, you know, lots of kudos. $12,000 in savings expected for the leaf bag costs. And so that, I mean, really, that's great. And so that offsets, we'll talk about some of the novel programs. And then additional services, just going through this. So composting, I think we'll recognize that this has been very successful. I think last year's budget that had been introduced and adopted, we had talked about the idea that we thought about 1/3, or we would get up to 100 households. We're up to 90. So that's really magnificent. And so really on track to hit that goalpost. The sidewalk shoveling, again, Michael and Aaron and the staff, all the credit in the world. So last year was 15,000. I think it was for and it was a limited number of households.
Yeah,
Maybe
I think
40.
we estimated that 15,000
Yeah.
would cover up to like 24 houses.
And let me, Michael, you know, but this now, because of Michael's, again, really excellent management and everything, we can use 15 to cover all households, which is really quite fantastic. So
Well, all households that have public
that
sidewalks.
have public sidewalks, excuse me.
Which is,
Same money, more. It's all good.
Yeah.
Okay, consulting support. This is just a little, in some ways, accounting, but last year, the idea was that we'd actually hire another part-time staff to help with all the significant, you know, contracts, ARPA, all the other things. And in the discussion that we had, it was more economical to look at this as on a contractual basis. So you'll see that there was a commensurate drop of about 40,
40,150.
yeah, about precisely. And that is then offset in this new category where we added a little top up to 50,000. And again, it just adds this flexibility, and you'll notice not only did it drop the salaries, but also the benefits. So it's a bit accounting, but it's also very wise fiscal management for what we're doing. And heading into the home stretch, the senior, you know, the Chevy Chase at Home, again, recognizing as a pilot program. And Arthur, you know, really, I had a discussion with him, and at first when I looked at this, and I think we had been targeting at least 10, was it 10?
we set
subscriptions?
aside money for about 12 memberships.
So putting that in perspective, we've had about 7. And so when I looked at it, I'm saying we didn't really hit our target. But if we look at the data that Michael has uncovered, we actually have 24 people within the village total who subscribe. So, and then having that chat with Arthur, we talked about this and we said, you know what, whether it's federal or local, it's the idea that it does take a little time for these programs to get started. And if you look at it in that respect, we really did very well. And that knowing that there's another, well over a dozen residents who subscribe, who didn't take advantage, this is where we can say, is it because they didn't hear? Is it because they really don't want this? But we felt that it was worthwhile to extend it. But again, we can talk, and Michael can explain that, for this amount that we budgeted, it could cover everybody. But again, if folks don't want to take it up, and we found out through data that people may say, hey, I don't want VMA money. I don't want you to pay for it. That's also going to be very
It
important.
would be interesting to find out, and we probably know this already, of the 7, if these are first timers.
I think they were.
They are.
So
There's only
that's
one
fantastic.
person that asked us to renew their membership, and we went ahead and did that for them.
And just to confirm, when we initiated this project, it was premised on the idea that there would be some sort of criteria applied to membership. It wasn't just
It was-
sign up and
right,
you
it
have a
was-
membership.
We discussed
Because
that.
of the parameters that Ron mentioned with regard to a workaround.
We discussed,
We couldn't just donate money to
no,
a
we're not donating.
profit.
No, we're
We could
not.
set up scholarships
Right.
on a contractor-ish basis.
You-
The
you
payment
know,
for services, which
payment
is
for-
Right,
the membership.
but
to
it
this
was
organization.
supposed to be predicated
Yeah,
on some
so-
sort of
And then that's actually what
criteria.
we discussed this at one point in the middle of the year, but I don't have a way to means test
But they
people
do.
to say,
No, they really don't.
Well,
So it's just-
why don't we, yeah, I mean, they have a scholarship program there.
Essentially, they
it-
say, if you're applying what money we have, we will. It's on application.
so the way we did, the way we did this
loosey-goosey.
pilot program year was just first come, first serve. We have
Right.
enough money up to 12 memberships. And we got 7 people so far that have signed up. I have 3 people I've given applications to that haven't signed up yet, so maybe they will. So, but- and
But
that's-
Susan's right, we did talk about some kind of qualification.
That was,
We couldn't find out how to do that.
Yeah, currently the honor system is in place.
yeah, and currently, those people who said, I would like a membership to CCRA or somewhere else, because I could really use that for my health and wellness.
We haven't approved a program.
Of
like
course
that.
we
But if
haven't,
you
but-
want to suggest it,
No, I don't.
put it forward,
No,
we'll put
because
it,
I don't
we'll
think we should
discuss
be
it in the
doing
budget.
this.
5-year
think-
waiting period. for
Right,
that,
right,
so
yeah.
that's all right.
Yeah.
I think,
I like the idea that the 7 have never before been members. I think that to
That-
me
that
helps
helps,
already
right?
kind of indicate maybe this was, they maybe had in their budget, but it would have made a difference between, medicine, the arguments, but it's still, it's
I
better.
think it's kind of an equity question about if we're only paying for memberships of people that are bold enough to ask for it or bold enough to, apply for it. That's kind of a question. And that's why I was thinking, well, there's only 24 people that all are members of this organization that do provide services to elderly people. Why don't we just pay for all of their memberships? So I asked them, how much would it be if the village did just cover all of the memberships Chevy Chase at Home from the village? And it was, they responded that it would probably be, there's different tiers of membership, but and like families sign up and there's a discount for that and stuff like that. But so they said about $10,000 would cover everybody if everybody signed up through our program. And that's really not that much more money. We already approved $6,000. So
So let me just put in perspective, and again, this is good discussion. I appreciate, I do very much appreciate what Susan is saying. And so just putting in perspective, this is not in any way, shape or form trying to cut off discussion, but remember, this is to introduce, we can have this and follow up. I think the questions Susan presents are really important. The other piece, and again, I'm not trying to say that this has the impact on whether or not we scrutinize every line item, but it is, if you notice on page 14, it's 1.6% of the budget. So I just want to share that it is a relatively low cost, but again, we have to be also, it's 1.6%, but it is $10,000. So we need to also recognize.
And again, I'm always considering the legal aspects, so that was concerning.
So, patience all, just another minute or two, I just want to share. So before I jump and show you the spreadsheet that goes through all the line items, I won't read that line by line, I promise. There were 3 other things just to point out. And one is the water, the task force. They've submitted a proposal. I'll check my WhatsApp and everything, whether Phil or Mark will be here, but essentially they have a proposal that looks at, and it goes
Proposal to the state.
to the state, but then they shared with us that because we have ARPA funds and it could be used, that the idea is that they've essentially modeled an amount of $160,000, but let me describe what that is. So 80,000 would be the technical survey and all the details to do a real thorough study, which is what essentially they submitted to the county. And then the other 80 is the implementation. So part of capital projects and other things. So putting that in perspective, and again, that's not listed here. This is just things we could use with the ARPA funds, is of the 160, 80, which is the implementation, is part of our capital budget line item reserve. So that isn't something that we necessarily would need to earmark. It's something that is there. So it's not like we would need to perhaps, reallocate, or it's there. We just don't know, would the study warrant us spending, or how spend in terms of the implementation. The 80,000, which is the study, again, there's a lot more details, so we will have time. The proposal and the grant we will share if either Phil or Mark are not able to be here. But essentially, it models what they submitted to the county, and we could take that 1-to-1, and we could say, yes, we will create an envelope for that, but recognizing that maybe in negotiation that could come down. Right? There's nothing that we would need to do to say that we have to spend that amount, but it does map to what they requested the county. So that is one topic that we could talk more about. Then I just want to put 2 things out that are not here, that are relatively very small budget items, but they could be things that would make a difference. I had spoken, some residents reached out and they had some break-ins into their cars the last couple of days, over the last couple of weeks. And one thing that they had suggested, which I thought was very interesting, was they had just bought for themselves a door cam for about $200. That doesn't include the annual subscription. And they had suggested possibly, well, what if we do a first come, first serve pilot of up to 10 households to offer some sort of a rebate or something, again, around security, that if someone would want to put a door cam, that we could reimburse them up to $200 first come serve, first serve for the first 10 households. That would be $2,000. Just a thought. We could research it, see if everything legality and all that, and also waiver, like, again, it's just a reimbursement. We're not saying it would make you more secure, but it would also perhaps be something we could offer on top of the police enforcement and other things. And then the other piece I wanted to share, which is something that is close to my heart because of an incident I had shared with council members, that actually a car ran into me literally at the exit way on the commercial parking lot in Turner. And Andrew, you know better than anyone, as the fellow bus stop dads, that there must be literally at least 50 or 60 kids and parents that cross back and forth easily a day. Now, I can share with you, I don't know if you have your own observations, but just between the office and just being out, it's not like I'm watching that intersection, but I would say I probably see at least 1 or 2 violations where a car will go left from Turner into the you should not enter. And then clearly you see cars that just speed out without any stop. Now, I'm not flashing because, again, just for time, but I took pictures of that intersection, and it is very clear. I mean, first of all, there is no left turn, stop. And then as you're coming, that's on Turner. But when you're leaving that, that parking lot, it clearly says traffic does not stop, right? And stop. So the suggestion here would be to allocate $5,000 for a traffic calming automated arm. So that every car, and it actually almost looks like something may have been there when it was a gas station, but whatever it is, again, I'm not a technical expert. That's why I just want to put out there for the council to consider perhaps allocating $5,000. We'd have to talk to Shirazi and, you know, that, but, you know,
Do you think
that's
that's enough or something like that? Because you need.
like I said, you don't want to rely on my technical expertise, but you know, I looked it up and that was kind of a high end that included installation, but I'm sure that, you know,
Yeah.
maybe there are ones.
Garage for the.
Yeah,
Like the arm goes
Oh, at
up.
I
this
love that at that intersection, every stop sign having an
Yeah.
arm. Because they don't,
Oh.
I mean, like getting out of Turner, it's like back-to-back cars coming from the Taylor stop sign there.
Can I
It's
just
crazy.
Yeah, go ahead.
comment?
Yeah.
When we're doing traffic calming measures and solutions to real problems that I acknowledge, we should start with actually an open, you know, we don't know what the solution is gonna be yet. You know, I appreciate that you've done some research and come up with this solution, but maybe we could get a, you know, if this is a problem that the council wants to look at, maybe we hire an engineer to come in and look at how to solve that corner, and that problem. And also,
Is it is it VMA property?
Well, and that's the problem. It's
yeah, I have some
Private drive,
questions about.
but a
the
private drive
legality of
comes
this.
onto the public right of way.
Right.
And,
Mhm.
How about, what are those at rental places? Those
oh, those
laws?
things.
So they can at least not drive in,
Well, that'll
flatten the
flatten
tires.
the tires.
The,
You'll
so,
only
so
do that
I
once.
think, I think we could probably find some solutions. I bet a traffic engineer would be able to, you know, make a recommendation to us on where we should go. And then the other thing is, you know, we do have designated reserves. We do have a line item for this, actually. Under designated reserves, we have $500,000 set aside for streets, and that's from our walkability stuff.
So, yeah,
So
I
that would
think
be included in
this
that.
deserves being looked at.
And I do want to just, you know, all credit is due, you know, Peter Ross, who's not on this call. I know I've mentioned David many times already, but you know, after having that chat with Peter Ross and, you know, really that inspired that. So just
Okay.
putting out there. Okay. So with all that said, the detailed line item is here. And the only thing to add is that may be of interest is adding a few additional columns. So if you look at the last two columns on the right, there's percent change from fiscal year 24 to this year. So you could just see those categories, whether they went up or down. And then what I thought also would be interesting for all the council members and the residents would be percent total for that line item for the overall budget by either revenue or expenditure. So for example, the income tax, as no surprise, is over 66% of our income or revenues. And so that's why, you know, it's one source. And so whether it's up or down, and then again, that interest is almost 18%. So that's why we always have to be on alert. And while we're in the flush, as they say, that those things can change. And then expenses, you can see also where the higher items are. So just you can look at that on your own. So
Jeff, may I just ask a question here on the utility property tax? Didn't we vote to eliminate that?
We eliminated,
No, the
Personal property.
which is eliminated and no
That's-
longer on here. Utilities is the utility companies pay rent.
Oh,
A
right,
very, very
right,
small
right.
portion. I mean, it's tiny,
Right.
sort of like. Disney
Putting their
owner-
lines on
Putting
the
their-
Right, yeah, I remember. now.
And it was
It's all big-
commented that the property tax, even though we are not increasing the rate, apparently the state believes that the assessed values will be rising. And so there'll be an increase there. I want to comment just on one or two of the items that Jeff has made. The water committee, as Jeff mentioned, has a proposal into the state if they get that grant, it would not begin until July 1st, or that's when they would officially know of it. And they probably would not be able to start spending money for a few months after that. In the meantime, so that we can get things going, we thought we could start a project financed by the village so that they can get going. And once that state money comes in, they'll be able to just pick it up and start running with it. So that essentially is what the Water Committee is proposing. On the shifting to from the staff salaries to a new person or I thought we've been discussing there are routine things that we could use a person for. For example, the contractor who's working on the voter roll could be helping on the directory. Very similar things, putting the directory. And this is something that the office staff just is such gut work over the years. It gets keep putting back, takes forever to do. If we could devote one person to it who's already familiar with village activities, it would help. And another thing is that if we start looking either from the Water Committee or from other efforts into building codes, we will need a consultant, someone who's specialized in working with building codes to help with that. So these are just things that could be done that hasn't been fleshed out yet, but could be, so it's there.
Sure.
Now, I have a question on the budget. Do we vote to introduce today, I believe?
Yes, we did.
Yes. So,
A big Ron, a big nod from Ron.
right. Okay, I will move to introduce the budget that has been presented by our treasurer. And we have a second. And we will vote. Everyone votes aye. So this will come up for a final vote in May. Be ready to discuss it. We will have almost 2 months to discuss it.
Arthur, just two quick, very quick
Yeah.
points. First, I didn't acknowledge at the beginning, I really should. Michael did a magnificent job getting us prepared.
Yeah.
I mean, really, he pulled everything.
And I do, as Jeff said, I want to thank the residents who attended, who provided solid input. Oh, there's what reminds me of one other thing. One of the things that came up for discussion quite frequently is police activity, policing, I should say, policing in the village, particularly with respect to traffic, traffic enforcement and parking enforcement. We do not have a solution for that right now. And especially on Brookville Road, we don't do it, but the county does, and the state. What I would like Michael to do is to start active discussions with the state and county on improving enforcement. Perhaps it was suggested having an enforcement week where it doesn't have to be done every day, but that week they come in force, remind people what the rules are, make sure people aren't speeding, stopping at lights. There aren't, it was suggested that perhaps there are extra heavy vehicles that are not, shouldn't be on these roads, are moving on the roads, looking for those. So I will task Michael to work more closely with the state. And
On that, I was just thinking, those county cops or village cops that are parked on the side roads further down. I guess they don't have jurisdiction here on Taylor, right? That would be county because it's not village.
Correct.
Yeah, trying to figure out how we can use our hours more efficiently and have some other cops.
there is
Stop sign.
right, and there is another possibility. We have no idea whether it actually exists. Hire a service to do parking control. The police won't do it. Ron doesn't want to go to traffic court. It's an open area now, but there must be someone out there who can do this. And we hope to track them down and see whether we can hire them.
Could we budget a tow truck for Michael?
That's what he'd like to have.
We'll have to talk about the legality of that, but I'll continue to look into it.
Okay, with that,
One other just on this was, so with this ARPA stuff and the suggested line items, should we then say at some point between now and the meeting that we expect to adopt, that we will have a plan of what we expect
that money is
ARPA,
gonna
and
go.
that would include following up with the water task force of just what amount we should perhaps put in.
So we really don't need to dedicate specifically which contracts each dollar is going to until the end of the calendar year. So we have done everything we need to do for the budget. There is an ARPA report that I have to fill out in April of every year. So in April, I will be going through everything that we have spent so far and reporting that to the federal government. And then that'll tell us how much we have left at
Cool.
that point.
And the only reason I say is obviously the task force is kind of on pins and needles. I'm getting back and forth, like Mark is ready to jump on, but he can't jump on until 9:15. So we just want to reassure that.
Okay,
It's okay.
We will follow up with it.
We
but
can
we
totally
are
follow up
following
with
up.
you
Good,
about that.
okay.
Perfect.
And
You
I-
want to give a treasurer's report separately?
I can make this brief.
Okay.
Well,
Okay,
hang on
fine.
real quick,
Oh,
just
fine.
on the budget. Ron, did we do everything we needed to do as far as introducing it? I know there's a budget resolution and a tax rate resolution. Should we introduce
Oh,
those
we have
as
to
well?
introduce the tax rate resolution as well.
Yeah, the resolution, I mean, could be introduced next month. Well, there's not 30 days between the April and May meetings. So yeah, it does need to be
Right, we have
introduced
to
tonight
do it
as
now.
well. Yeah.
So I will move, we have a tax rate resolution in the packet. Where is that? I will move to introduce the tax rate resolution that maintains the property tax at its present level of $0.002 per $100.
Double check, quadruple check.
Right.
Yes. And related to the budget, Michael was gonna start sending me home when I'm no longer needed for the remainder of the meeting for some savings. So I'm gonna sign off now and wish you all a good night.
Okay.
This is not because.
Wait, hey, Ron, wait,
Yes.
it says, boy, this is where the decimals get, 0.002 of a cent. I think we mean
This is why it's confusing, the language versus the decimals.
per $100.
Yes,
And that is it's $0.002. That is
Right.
0.002 of a cent. Right, okay,
correct,
got
correct.
it. Okay, good thing I had differential
It's
equation,
0.002 of a cent
right.
per $100.
Per
$100 of a cent.
Yeah.
Okay, I have moved to introduce resolution number 2024-2 to levy a tax on certain real and personal property. We have a second? Second, all in favor? Aye. Okay.
Seconded.
Good, treasurer's report.
Katie be the second on this one.
Thanks, Ron. Oh,
Thanks, Ron.
Okay, so make this brief, but in general, we are on track. And again, we are also, if you look at sort of the things of note here, is our income budget versus actual is significantly higher than expected, almost $400,000 higher. And that is due to the ARPA funds and the interest. So again, we are in a very enviable cash position. We've already talked about this and how we, still need to be very responsible, because at the same time, these sweeteners do go away. And if you look actually at the lines, it's very close to gimbal lock in terms of our income versus expenses. And it's very possible that those lines may shift, and they may shift, relatively soon. So even though we have significant reserves, at some point, as one would say, the variable or the incremental costs overcome your incremental income, that's when you go from this sweetener and in the black to in the red pretty quick. So we just need to really be on top of that. But
Right.
again, we're looking at a horizon of 5 or 10 years where we are, in current great standing.
At the next meeting, we are going to make the line item adjustments, I think, for legal.
That's true, and I should have said that while Ron was on. We
Yeah.
will need to make a budget adjustment before the end of the year. In any of the next 3 meetings, we can make that, but there's gonna be a number of categories where we're going over,
Right.
Yeah.
Okay,
including elections, because we hired a contractor, so.
right. Managers report.
Yes, thank you all. It is 8:34. Just a couple quick things. First of all, just a reminder that the May council meeting is moved to May 9th. Please mark your calendars. That will be our quote unquote annual meeting according to the charter when we'll actually adopt this budget. Dropping down a couple points here in my report on page 22 of your packet. Arbor Day is coming up in the first week of April. Last year we did a walk to talk about super trees and the benefit that really old big trees provide. This next year, I figured since we've been planting so many trees, which I'm very proud of, maybe we should do a walk to talk about how to care for those new trees and how to, you know, especially in the first year, it's really important to water and those types of things to hopefully make sure that those trees survive and flourish and become super trees someday. So Paula Goldberg, the tree supervisor, and myself will be organizing a walk on April 5th. I encourage everyone to come and join, and we'll walk around and talk about trees for a little bit.
Coincide with World
Arbor Day. What is it?
It's not actually.
Arbor Day is different for every single state. So,
Just
so
checking.
in the state of Maryland, and they try to line it up with yours growing zone. So in Maryland, it's April 3rd this year.
Okay.
In Nebraska, where it originated, it's April 22nd.
Okay,
Very interesting. So, and we do apply for the award from the Arbor Day Foundation every single year to be recognized as a tree city. One of the requirements of that application, which is a very extensive application to get that. I think we've gotten it 15, this will be our 15th year that we'll get it. One of the requirements is that you have to sign an acknowledgement that you're celebrating Arbor Day. So this is our way of saying, see, we're doing something for Arbor Day. So that we can remain a tree city. And if you notice, the signs as you're entering the village have a number of years of how many years we've been Arbor. Those aren't all in a row because there's definitely years over that the village has actually missed and not applied. So as long as I'm here, I want to get it every single year. I want a new sticker that says
Tree City.
that moves it up a year.
Yeah.
So anyways, moving on to maintenance, there is a couple of contracts that will be coming up over the next couple of months that I'll need to be posting RFPs for and those types of things. Those include the sidewalk paving because Mike Beers closed his business and retired. The Mulherron Tree Experts is a contract, a pretty large contract. And I have a good working relationship with them, but that does expire at the end of the year. So we'll need to start thinking about that. And then also the GIS. This fiscal year, we haven't spent any money on GIS because we kind of do the update to our map every couple of years. This next year, I would like to re-sign a contract with them to make some updates because we have some new houses and some trees have changed. And all of those fine details of our mapping system. I also am going to try to write in that contract some training for. So
and this is where an assistant could be useful to do updates.
yeah, and actually, and I would like some training myself on that. That's a very good skill to have, GIS mapping. So I will try to include that in that contract, but that's something I'm going to be looking at in FY25 as well. This is the part, Marty, if you're still online, that I mentioned the street sweeping in the spring. Last year we didn't do it, and we were under this budget category, so I thought we would have enough money this year to do it. We don't because they spent some extra hours.
We could add to it.
But
Do they have the capacity?
They can and they will, and they'll charge us the same rate that they do the fall ones. So it's just a matter of whether the council will approve me going over this budget.
Approval to do it.
Is that 15?
It's hourly, so it depends on how many hours it takes them. The reason why it's a little, I think we have
Right.
15 grand is what we budgeted for it, and we're like right at that right now. So
That's for the fall, it's 15?
it's
That's for
total.
twice
a year.
Yeah.
That's for.
I was gonna say, I don't think this requires the same amount as the fall, because the fall they come, leaves fall again, they come again, leaves fall again.
Yeah.
This is probably
Really
less,
laborious too,
yeah.
in the
yeah,
fall.
right.
Yeah. And actually, that's probably why they went when it took a little bit longer this last year, and they had more crew members out here doing it, was because they ended up street sweeping on days where it just rained. So a lot of leaves were really wet too, which makes them way heavier and harder to work with. So
So should we direct them to do an extra spring cleaning?
And we'll include
Okay.
it in the budget.
I see a lot of notes.
But yeah, but
Okay.
maybe try to time it until after some of the
Yes.
pollen and all that tree junk falls.
Yeah. And we're just doing it once.
Okay, do it.
Okay,
Okay.
so, thumbs up on that.
I want to go back to the legal costs. During our budget discussion, one of our residents noted that Martin's Additions per capita has something like 3 times the legal costs of any of the surrounding villages, and we all use the same lawyer,
Mhm.
which suggests that we have some overuse. So Michael's been looking for ways to,
Yeah, and I did have a conversation with
Compromise.
Ron, as he just mentioned about this. And a lot of the other neighboring towns actually don't have him come to the meetings at all unless there's something specific.
and we've had some very long meetings.
And they just
Yeah.
wing it, and we're trying to do it
Yeah.
by the book.
For sure, and we know we've had some things this year that have run up that bill. But
Well, this is not new. We've heard these complaints in the
Right.
past.
Yeah.
totally,
So-
and I've asked him to start dropping off when he knows there's nothing on the agenda, and I'm gonna kind of signal to him
Okay,
when that is going forward, just to kind of be mindful of that budget line item.
And two quick things just to add to that, because again, I think we all appreciate Ron and everything he brings to the table. One, we also talked about there may be some misclassification in terms of not all legal fees are Ron. So even though there has been an increase, let's all be
That's
fair.
true.
that
We
it's
had a
very much
consultant.
within what we had budgeted for, but still there's the perception.
yeah.
The other thing was, and again, this is really hair splitting, and I very much appreciate the idea that this is not feasible. But there is precedent for the idea that other municipalities in other states, not the state of Maryland, where they've had legal representation charge different billing rates. One for actual legal advice versus attending an administrative meeting. So, and again, I don't believe that is what, Ron is set up to do those sort of fee schedules, but just putting in, there's actual precedent for that, to do that if, he wanted to, but I just put that out there.
Okay,
I did ask him about if he has different rates for different functions, and he said no.
And
it's one rate.
that's reasonable, understood.
okay.
Under projects, just 2 quick things. Brookville Road, we have a updated conceptual plan from Clark Azar, the engineering firm. I found this out yesterday. There are 6 properties that will be impacted where the right-of-way line will actually have to cross to put a 5-foot sidewalk in. So we will be working with Ron and the engineer and those 6 homeowners to try to work out some sort of easement where we have rights to encroach a couple inches. It's not a lot. If one of those neighbors wouldn't let us do that, we can always sign a waiver, apply for a waiver to go down to a 4-foot sidewalk at that point. So there's workarounds if someone's not willing to work with us. But
Remind me, is this part of the capital project reserves or is this ARPA?
Well,
they're the same thing. We're accounting for it under capital reserves, but those capital reserves right now are being paid for with ARPA funds.
Okay, got it. Because we had separate
If you look at,
pre-ARPA
if you go back
capital
and-
reserves.
right, that's
right,
it.
right. The line items stayed the same. If you go and look at it, that we have indicated that
Look at the
line is being
asterisk.
paid for with.
Right.
ARPA funds.
And by the way, it reminds me, when we started this process to expedite it, there was still the chance and hope that we would be made whole in part.
There was,
That-
there was this idea that the state highway administration has funds to reimburse projects along their state highways. State highway funding has been cut drastically in the last year. And they have told me that they will not be,
Oh, they have
they
said
will
that
not
now.
be
Okay.
refunding us for the
Okay.
sidewalk. We are paying for the sidewalk.
A bit of bait and switch by those guys.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
not surprising at all. And we kind of knew that, which is why we were fully prepared to pay for
Yep.
this ourselves.
Yep.
So that sidewalk's moving forward. We are getting really close to starting to have conversations with the homeowners and we'll hold a meeting with the entire, all residents.
And now
to
now we have
go-
to find a contractor to do it.
And then we'll be and then there's a permitting phase with state highway and county, because there's like stormwater management, sediment control stuff. We have to get all of that signed off by both county and state. And then we can go to posting an RFP to actually do it. So this is, gonna be around $250,000 project. So there's your ARPA funds. That's where, we have 600,000 left or something. over $250,000 is going to go to the sidewalk.
Good.
And our goal is to have that under contract by the end of the year. So that's kind of a timeline for you, which lines up with the ARPA funds.
Okay,
So moving forward with that, as was mentioned earlier, we are also doing the resident, the directory will be updated later this year. And I'm already starting thinking about how I want to improve that directory.
I'm sure those 77 folks, if they're not really
Yeah, get those
voting,
people
that
out of
they're.
Also use really heavy staples in the center.
Yeah, and there is some questions about, have people disclose to us that they're willing for us to share their contact information. So there's gonna be a lot of questions about that. I'm gonna take on that project in the fall, so.
Okay.
But it is
We
coming up.
talked about like a digital version online as well at some point. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
and
not
it's
add to
our
it right
IT
now.
guy rolls his eyes because he thinks that's a terrible idea, and actually even having like
who thinks it's a terrible idea?
our IT guy or, yeah,
Okay.
because you shouldn't. I mean, and that's true with anything,
What about a PDF version?
yeah, I mean, it basically is a PDF version, that we just print into a booklet. So,
Right, but could people say, I want to download a PDF or send them a PDF?
Password
The-
password
The
protect.
problem is that scammers can just get all that information,
Yeah.
so you don't want to be giving out information.
But this is not the time or place to talk about, it, but the reality is that it's complete myth to say that paper is more secure because there are so many people who pick up the paper and scan it.
And
And
scan
so
it, yeah.
I think we've got to get past this. a little
Yeah.
bit.
Anyway,
Anyways, there will be a consent for the people that haven't already indicated that they're okay with us sharing their contact information.
and as we all know, you
Question.
Google someone's name, you'll get all that info. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Well, we do have some residents that are very particular about their
And they
being
opt out.
anonymous,
Yeah.
so.
That's fine. That's good.
Okay, so that project will be in the fall. Already there's a lot of opinions and ideas about it, obviously, so. And just under buildings, I have included Doug Lohmeyer's report. We will need to have residential information meetings for 3 properties that are about to come online. We're having 3 new houses built in the near future at 204 Oxford, at 3515 Cummings, and 3518 Shepherd. Those are all require resident informational meetings.
And now with our new updates to the water retention devices, that we won't have any more cement nuclear submarine sized.
We have, thanks to this council, we have outlawed those in this village. Above grade water retention devices in the side yard setback, whatever, yeah. So that is effective. And by the way, the code and the charter and everything that we've updated over the last year is updated on the website and everything's up to date. So we're good.
Good.
Great.
And that
Good.
concludes my report.
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you. Any questions?
I have a question.
Go right ahead.
It's actually related to the park, which I know is outside our domain, but I wondered if anyone here might have any connections or know what's going on. A couple of residents have asked me,
About what?
the goals
Shepherd,
posts at
yeah.
the park,
Yeah.
are they going to be anchored or move? I saw that they moved
Yeah.
from the cul-de-sac, but
Yeah.
are they gonna, is there, have you heard from park, like, Miami Parks, what they're
Yeah,
doing down
something's
there?
funky going on. They were first
Yeah.
parked on the side, like toward the north end of the park.
Yeah, they were right on the, like, right
Yeah.
on, well, maybe Keith would know. He's our man on the scene. Have you heard anything? What's going on?
Eyewitness News, here's Keith
Yeah.
Allen.
And please
Person-
excuse my voice. I have laryngitis, so I
Person
apologize.
Seems to be in the know, but other than Keith, who's Monty.
Monty,
Yeah, Monty
oh,
seems to have a good
Okay,
relationship.
maybe we should ask Monty.
Okay.
And I just, one thing before we do
Yeah,
resident
go right
comments, I just wanted to say, since we talked budget and treasurer's report, I just wanted to commend Michael one more time. From the minute he touched down in the VMA, he started saving us money. Like he found places where,
So
whether it was our storage, whether it was.
Rental.
Yeah, I mean, just kudos, really, really impressed. I mean, I remember when we were between village managers trying to get this credit card to work for our leaf bags and I had to use my credit card multiple times. $12,000. It's remarkable. So thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Really incredible job.
Thank you.
Bravo.
Good. Okay, with that, we can turn to residents. Any residents have burning issues they want to discuss?
Yeah, please. Burning only.
Only burning issues.
849.
We've got 2,
Marty
Lynn
and Lynn
Woody.
Willie.
Marty
I
and
don't
who?
see the letters.
Let Lynn go first. If
Okay,
that's okay. Lynn, I'm
Lynn?
referring to you.
Lynn,
Hey,
your
good
burning
evening,
issue.
everybody.
Hello.
Hope you're all well. Um, Following up on comments Arthur was making earlier about parking enforcement. On Quincy Street, we have on the south side of the street, no parking signs for the entire length of the block from Brookfield all the way to the dead end. It seems there's a lot of people drivers that come in just are either blind, and I don't know how they got their driver's license, but they don't seem to see the signs. I recently had the opportunity to call in a crew to do some pruning of my magnolia tree. Before they showed up on that morning, I sent a request that they instruct all the drivers of the vehicles to observe and obey the no parking signs. The drivers received that communication and they honored it wonderfully, and were very cooperative with me as far as making sure their vehicles. This involved a truck with a chipper on the back, another truck with a trailer that carried the machine that went up high in the air, and so that was a flatbed trailer. And so I was wondering if some way residents could be asked when they have a scheduled delivery or service to please instruct the drivers, make a request that the drivers observe the no parking signs and obey them. And then following up with Michael's recent weekly updates, he has talked about don't block the driveways. Another thing that is an issue is people will pull into a driveway, crossing the sidewalk, and the vehicle is partially out on the curb and partially approaching the property that they're servicing and totally blocking the sidewalk. So forcing a pedestrian to skirt around that vehicle and potentially out onto the street where traffic is. And if he could add some little statement that not only blocking the driveway, say a vehicle parked curbside on the street, but they also not pull their vehicle into the driveway in such a way that they're actually blocking the sidewalk and taking away the use of the sidewalk from pedestrians, which, by the way, is against county code and village code. So that's what's on my mind. I would really appreciate some sort of closer look at no parking on the south side of Quincy Street. Yesterday, as an example, there was a flatbed truck parked on my side of Quincy Street, close to the fire hydrant. It was there for about 30 minutes with a car on the back. And the car parked across the street. If a first responder comes along, they can't get through. So if that could be given some consideration, I would appreciate it. And I think it would make life potentially better for some situation somewhere down the road where an emergency first responder has to get through and can't.
Yeah.
That's my
Thank you,
piece.
Lynn.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Marty?
Thank you. Yes, and appreciate the opportunity to go through a very short list here. First, bravo on the budget documents. They were clear and understandable. And Jeff, I thank you for the presentation. And Michael, I thank you for what I know was a lot of work that went into that with Jeff and Arthur on that, and just kudos. Couple of points. Thank you for the composting. We're one of the households that is now joined. We love it. Thank you for the idea of having a traffic engineer to look at that parking lot. That parking lot has been giving me heartburn for 40 years because kids run through it on foot and on scooters and on bikes. And it's really, I think, the single most dangerous place in the entire village is that parking lot behind the shops. The exit there onto Turner, I've almost been hit there. And I'm one of the people who stops. So, and look, so that is really a dangerous, dangerous situation. And I really applaud you for looking into it. Michael, your idea of having a traffic engineer give us some recommendations, I think that's exactly what's needed. Bravo. I think also, when you talk about IT improvements, I'm really glad to hear that. I know that Constant Contact has been difficult to work with, Michael. It was difficult for your predecessors too. And whatever platform we go to, I really hope we do go to a new platform that can not only provide better, ease for the village staff to put notices out, but also set up some way to publicly track requests from villagers like parking issues and other things and replies so that there's some kind of public message board on the new platform that lets people know what's being done on the various issues. Because I think one of the things that's been problematic, not new here, but problematic for years, has been that people, make requests and then they don't know that anything happened on it. They don't ever hear anything about it. So whether it's police enforcement or, more better police patrols or cameras, like the doorbell cameras or whatever, any of these items, I think it would be immensely helpful to have some kind of public platform that includes public requests and replies. I just think that would be such a useful community communication device. So when you're looking at platforms, please include that. I want to thank you for again the support on the election this year, and suggest that going forward, when you look at the budget for next year, that we include. I don't think we need 7,000 next year or 8,000 for the voter roll verification, but please include 3, because I think that it would be very useful to have a contractor help the committee with that again next year. It's been just an eye opener to see how helpful it is to have the contractor this year. I don't think we'll need as much work next year, so I think maybe half the budget, but please do include that in the election budget for next year to have a contractor assist with the voter roll verification process again. And overall, I really want to commend the entire council and Michael for moving to a system where the village routinely does bring in expertise, contractors, consultants, engineers, whatever we need, because I think that brings a level of professionalism and information across the board, whether it's traffic engineers or an assistant who's able to help with the voter roll or help with the directory. I just think hiring contractors is a smart move in a lot of different areas, and I commend you all for moving toward that. I say that as a government contractor myself, who gets hired by a lot of different agencies to do these kind of specialized projects, and it's just so much more efficient. So yay, team. And last but not least, I wanted to ask if there's going to be a public forum on the budget, and if so, if it could be scheduled like at 7 p.m. or later. I had a couple of neighbors say to me that they would have liked to have sat in on the public discussion, but it was at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and they were at work. I was at work that day. So will there be a forum about the budget for further community input? And number 2, can we do that forum after 7? That's my question.
We will discuss it at the next meeting, and we will have opportunity for everyone to comment, to look at it beforehand and comment during the meeting. That's what the this 2 months is all for, is for review and discussion.
So people who have budget questions should come to the next council meeting and do it.
Indeed,
That forum.
indeed.
From your perspective, we're not voting to adopt at the next meeting, so
Right,
we
will
will
be
have
adopted in May.
time. And as you know, everyone knows, usually despite, we publicize, and usually it's a couple residents, so we'll end up having more people attend to this, having it as part of an open meeting, council meeting, than if we did a standalone, is my guess, so.
I think that sounds fine. Just let's publicize it so people know that they should come and do their suggestions there.
Okay.
Thank you also
good
for the
idea.
composting. And thank you for, really what looks to me like a budget that is very responsive to community needs and community input. And I appreciate that personally and on behalf of all the neighbors who buttonhole me on the street. Thank you.
Thank you, fire board.
We're gonna go into closed session.
We don't have to, we can do an open board, unless we.
Yeah.
Okay,
Ron's not here, so.
okay. Are there any more resident comment, any hands up?
No, the water guys aren't on yet.
What's up?
Have you heard an update? Is Mark or
Oh, I've
Oh.
been texting, so
Yeah.
Mark wasn't available till 9:15, so I think we're gonna
Okay.
hit our mark. And I
So those to go home.
texted, we'll be in touch with him next
Right.
week on
Yeah,
the
right.
details.
Okay.
Okay, we have put out a request for nominations, for people for the fire board from the Chevy Chase Fire Company that's up the street, that street. And we have had one nomination. Michael,
Well, the current nomination for the council to consider is Drew Maker from Thornapple Street. This is also the person that just purchased 3515 Cummings and is building a house there. So yeah, that's for the council to consider making that appointment. The fire board also did reach out to us and asked us to fill that third position, as did Paul Weller, who came and presented to the council a couple months ago. So.
Right. So I will suggest that we nominate him to the fire board and he can buy coffee for the firemen.
I'll second.
Okay, second, okay, so we have a member of the fire board. To remind people, the fire board is kind of a holdover from the days when we had a volunteer fire department. And they had built the firehouse. And when the county took it over, they continued to hold ownership of it. And they are the group who manage it.
I'll let Drew know and then let the fire board know.
Okay, thank you. With that, unless we have any other comments from council members, I declare the meeting adjourned. Move to adjourn.
Oh,
Move to.
Move to
We have
adjourn.
a second.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Meeting adjourned.